Happy Wednesday night, everybody. Welcome to Deep in the Plus. I'm your host, Rob Whiteside. Thank you, as always, for being with us. We appreciate it. If you have not already, please subscribe to WDW and TTV for more great content, and also give this video a thumbs up as it helps people to find us. Tonight, we're going to be talking about Percy Jackson and Olympians, The Lightning Thief, but the movie, not the series. And to talk about this, I dragged our good friend Emma in to have this conversation.
Hello.
How's it going, Emma? Are you good?
Oh, yeah, I'm doing great. How about you?
Yeah, I'm good. You didn't have to get dressed up. That's okay. I appreciate you coming on anyway. Um, when I dropped, and we have a chat, an internal chat, and when I dropped this title in, you were like, I'll talk about that one. And Percy Jackson and the Olympians is one I've been wanting to talk about for a while. It was something that 20th Century Fox owned, and when Disney bought 20th Century Fox, it came into the family. I thought this was extra cool because this book series was on Hyperion Books, which is owned by Disney. So I always thought, well, it should have been Disney's anyway, but then the rights went to 20th Century Fox. They made two movies. We're just talking about the first one, and then now there's a series on the way, and we'll talk about that later. But I guess my question to you is, why did you stand up and say, let me talk about that one? Do you love the books? Do you love the movies? Or do you talk to me?
So Percy Jackson was a series I read as a kid. I don't remember reading the whole series. I think I maybe read the first three books. But anyway, so that's the thing. I love the book series, so I was kind of excited to talk about the movie, even though I have some rants, some thoughts about the movie. But I am excited for the series that's coming in December, because I think, and I'll explain and talk about it more, but I think they can do a lot more with a series than they can a film in 2 hours, which I think it should have been longer, but yes.
Well, but again, that's that thing. That's that sweet spot of how long are you willing to put up with? I know that when we go to review a movie, I almost am like just almost looking away when I pull it up on Disney Plus to see how long is this movie going to be. I always joke about The Happiest Millionaire because Patrick and I were like, let's do that one, and it's 3 hours with an intermission in the middle, and we're like, what have we done? But with Percy Jackson, it's 2 hours. But if it's a family movie, it's got to be a reasonable length, or else, like,
Right.
the kids get bored and tired, or it can become, I think, too much. But my wife read all these books. I did not, and so she was very excited when the movie came out. She's very happy with the way the movie worked, but I think a lot of people aren't, because probably they had to truncate it. They had to make it a lot shorter to fit into, as you said, those 2 hours. So if you're looking for the actual, like, read the book, you can pick up Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief by Rick Riordan. He has written a bunch of stuff, but he has also written a ton of kind of mythology series as well. So and when it comes to mythology, I don't realize how much I don't remember until we start watching something like this, and I always like turn to her and ask her like 9,000 questions. Are you pretty into mythology specifically? This one's all Greek mythology, but are you kind of into it?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, I think Greek mythology was something I was nerdy about as a kid. I don't know. It also might have to do with my love for Shakespeare, which I was also nerdy about as a kid when I was introduced in middle school, and I'm still nerdy about today, partially because of my job, but also because I genuinely enjoy it. But yeah, because like Greek mythology and Roman mythology is like interwoven into a lot of those plays as well. So it's, and into theater. I mean, there's how many versions of the Orpheus and Eurydice story that are out there, for instance. So
Already,
yeah, I would say.
yeah, already you're over my head when it comes to that kind of stuff. I honestly I like Hercules. That's my answer to that. I like Hercules. That's the animated movie. That's my favorite. I still think that Disney should do more with mythology, because it is so deep with the lore. They could concentrate on any of the gods in all of this. But the way this movie opens up is that someone has stolen Zeus's lightning bolt, i.e.,
Yes.
the lightning thief Poseidon shows up to meet with Zeus, and at this part, I'm like going, okay, wait, Kevin McKidd and Sean Bean are showing up on like in the first few minutes of this movie. I'm like, okay, this is a big deal movie. Again remember seeing it in theaters, thinking this is going to be huge because of the cast, if nothing else, and the following for the Percy Jackson books. So one of the things that I talked about, in the thumbnail for this is it really that bad? Because I don't think it's one of those movies that most people got into, and so I think it is a hidden gem on Disney Plus. But we'll talk about it at the very end when we give final thoughts as to what actually you think of the movie as a whole. But anyway, it opens up with someone stolen Zeus's lightning bolt, which I didn't even know was a thing you could do. And so Zeus is like, in 14 days at midnight, if it's not back in my hands, then there's going to be a war. And I just immediately, the first thing I'm thinking is, that's a really arbitrary number. Like 14 days, and there's a solstice coming. I don't really know how that works, but apparently that's the cutoff of it. But he's really lenient in giving 14 days for this to come back, don't you think?
Sure, we'll call it lenient. But like so this is like one of the things I wish they hadn't changed from the books. I wish they had kept it the Fates introducing this thing and almost introducing it like a prophecy and things. Like I wish that had happened, which I'm not sure why they decided in the writing to just have this scene opening like with Zeus and Poseidon talking to each other about this. I'm like, ooh. Like it's just, I don't know, it's just kind of, it's not very exciting to me, and I don't know why they changed it from the book, but it's fine.
And there's also the weirdness of like when he comes on land, like Poseidon is as tall as like he's like Ant-Man, gigantic man like size, and it's just like, why, it's almost like, why did this need to happen? Because he's walking in and he's next to this little dude so that you can see it for reference, and then he does this big splash of magic and he becomes normal sized guy. I don't know why they needed to do that. I don't know, is it like that in the books? Do they describe them as being like super tall and big?
Not that I can recall. I don't think. I don't know if that detail was in there, but
well, and once Poseidon has turned into his like human sized form, he also like turns into his human sized outfit, and he's like wearing something that looks like he walked right off the set of Grey's Anatomy. So there he is. So anyway, Kevin McKidd, love him. I think he's great. Sean Bean, I think, is great. There are a lot of big names in this, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But the point of the opening is to establish the journey, right? Like this is the problem, is that you've got exactly 14 days to get the lightning bolt back to me, and we think your son Percy took it. And so I don't know why they think Percy took it. Like I don't know if they explain that in the books, but they don't really, I don't feel like, as someone who's just watching this as a movie, explain why it is that everyone thinks Percy specifically took this lightning bolt, because he doesn't really even know anything about who he is, where he comes from at this point. They've sheltered him from all that. I don't know why they think it was Poseidon's son, unless it's just because Poseidon would be the most likely person to do it. Although Hades seems like it would be like Hades, I think he probably was the one who took it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. They also took out, which I don't know why, they took out Ares as a character, and who's the god of war, and there's a whole plot over the whole series where they're trying to bring back Kronos, who is Zeus's father and like the father of all the gods essentially, and which is part of the war, and why it's so it's like that whole thing is convoluted, and not to mention the fact we're not supposed to know, at least in the books they don't reveal that Percy is the son of Poseidon until the later scene that happens in the movie where he is in the scavenger hut with the water and he like finds out that he has powers for the first time. Like we don't know that. And like to me that just kind of ruins the whole thing that they just tell you, right? I'm like, well, great, there goes that surprise.
Stupid people. One of the things they're very heavy-handed about the Poseidon thing, though. Like when it first
Yes.
opens up, he's sitting in water for 7 minutes as the credits roll. And I'm just like, okay, we get it. Like he can breathe underwater. Like that's a thing. And then there's the scene later on, and I think this is the one you're talking about, where he's at the camp and he hears the voice of his father saying, "Go to the water. The water will give you strength." And he goes and he kind of like he's shaking his hand and he like cups it in the water. It's almost like, dude, if you are dying, just slap your hand in the water. But again, it becomes this big. It's so heavy-handed. Yes, we get it. Poseidon's son. Which I think it'd be neater to just kind of find out on your own. But like you said, that in the book apparently they do. In this, not so much.
Yeah. Well, because that's part of the camp is that when the kids get there for the first time, they don't know what, like, they don't necessarily know, like, who their godparent is. So that, like, that's the whole thing in the book is that Percy is put into Hermes' cabin automatically because he doesn't know, like, who his god figure, who his parent is, which is how he meets Luke and that whole thing starts. So that's the other thing. And like there's nobody in like the big three houses, Zeus, Poseidon, or Hades, because they weren't supposed to have children out of all the gods. And so it's like that's the thing. It's supposed to be a big deal that they find out that he's the son of Poseidon and that like that wasn't supposed to happen. And yeah, so they're very heavy-handed with it, which, like, again, if they
Yeah.
had kept it to the books, would make sense. But because, again, they make it very obvious from the beginning, yeah, it's a little
But
much.
but the other thing is that you mentioned it, the big three, Hades and Poseidon and Zeus. I don't know that I've ever heard anybody acknowledge the gods by the big three until this
Right.
movie. So in the books, I assume that they're just saying, "Hey, these are in our minds. These are the heavy hitters, the ones that decide everything on Mount Olympus, right?"
Right. Well, because, again, because Zeus is the head of, like, he's in charge of Mount Olympus. Poseidon is in charge of the seas. And then Hades is in charge of the underworld. So it's like the three, like, big realms, essentially, which is why they're, like, the big three. But they don't
I
explain that in the movie either.
when you say underworld, I just hear the gospel truth and the muses singing in my head. He ruled
Yes.
the underworld. All right, so so we're by this point we're introduced to Hades, not Hades. We're introduced to Poseidon, and we're introduced to Zeus, and then we're introduced to Percy, and then Percy's good buddy Grover. So Grover
Hmm.
is at this point just his friend. He has to walk with these crutches. This is all we know. Apparently, Percy is not so super popular in his school. One of the things that we find out too is like through this is that he's got what he thinks is dyslexia because he's in class and the numbers or the words just kind of jumble around on the screen. So then he gets home and he has a conversation with his mom and it's like, hey, I know you sent me to the special school, but it's not helping. The dyslexia is getting worse. And so we're learning through this very quickly. It's almost like they're shoving information down our throats very quickly to get us on board because by the time we get to Camp Half-Blood, it's like 20 minutes into the movie that we've gone
Yeah.
on this journey from Percy not knowing who he is, the setup of you have 14 days to get the lightning bolt back and we think Percy took it, to finding out that again his reveal of what's happening. But there's just the whole thing about her his mom and this like horrible guy she lives with, and all of it's just shoved down our throats so much. But one of the things that I looked to my wife about all this because I was like, oh, again, about the books, because I didn't read the books. The thing about the school, she said apparently he got kicked out of a bunch of schools. And this one, they make it seem like they've taken him to this school because it would be special for his needs. But it doesn't look like anybody else has a special need in the school other than Percy.
Well, and I guess Grover as well, because he's a satyr, even though it's, it's not revealed yet. And I mean, then we find out eventually that Chiron, who is hidden as, I can't remember his professor name in the human world. But anyway, I feel like I think, is the only reason why Percy is sent there specifically, is because of that one teacher who's there who can protect him, which, good thing he was, because then Miss Dobbs, the substitute teacher, turns into, I can't remember the name of the creature, but tries to kill Percy.
The Fury. Yeah, she turns
Fury,
into a Fury. Yeah. And Mr. Brunner is the name of Pierce Brosnan's character.
Mr. Brunner, yes.
Yeah.
It. Yep.
Love me some Pierce Brosnan. There was a TV show that you're too young to remember called Remington Steele. He was awesome on it. We always thought he would make a great James Bond. Eventually, after Timothy Dalton failed, they were like, let's throw him in and we'll make him a James Bond. He had Goldeneye and a couple others, and then he was out of there. So I always love seeing him, whether it's as Dr. Fate in the Black Adam movie or as Mr. Brunner in the Percy Jackson. I always love seeing Pierce Brosnan show up somewhere. So I mean, again, to me, that's a big name. To you, you might have been like, who? I don't really know who that is.
That's a big name to me. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So he goes to the school and he the substitute teacher is a Fury. She attacks him, and then that's when everything unveils very quickly that they don't even explain to him who he is. They're just like, you're very special. You've got to go home and tell your mom, and, we've got to get you to somewhere else safe. And that's when they take him to Camp Half-Blood. And as they're standing out in front of the Camp Half-Blood, here comes a Minotaur, grabs his mom, and then she disappears into smoke. And I'm just like, at that point, I'm like, what? Like, I don't know. Like, we find out later what happened and how she got there, but it was just like, out of context, it's just like, we don't find that out for at least another, 5-10 minutes in the movie.
Yeah, and there's, a whole part where they skip where, I think the idea was, that him and his mom were supposed to go to Montauk together. And, that's where the Minotaur shows up in the book, I think. And then he ends up going to Camp Half-Blood. But, I digress. That's a small detail, which I'm like, that's fine that they skipped over that in the movie. But, the other thing that they skipped over is that Percy is actually supposed to, fight and, kill the Fury, which happens in the book, which I'm surprised didn't happen in the movie. Because I'm like, there should be a battle sequence here. And then I was like, okay, I guess there's not going to be a fight. Great. And then, the Minotaur, battle is super anticlimactic. And so I was like, okay. Fine, sure. But yeah, that's the whole thing, and they also don't explain this in the movie, is that Percy's mom is with Gabe specifically to hide Percy's scent so he can't be found by all these magical creatures. So that's why, when they leave, that's why all of a sudden he's able to be hunted down
Tracked
by these beings. Yeah. So that's I don't know why they don't talk about it in the movie at all, but
they eventually explain that about the guy being smelly. Gabe, it's like he's got his name's like Gabe Ugliano. I mean, come on, you couldn't, again, very heavy-handed. He's an awful played very brilliantly though, but by Joe Pantoliano. Pantoliano. That's his name. Anyway, the guy from The Matrix. I think that he does a good job of being just a horrible guy, but he's the stepdad, and he's the reason that, as you said, that the mom has used him as a way to mask Percy's smell so that he can't be sought out by all these people. But I don't know, again, that doesn't track well for me because, again, you explain the rules to me and I understand them, but this guy is not with him every day. He goes off to his school.
Right.
He goes off to museums. He sits in the pool, which you would think would take that stank off of him. But I don't understand how that part works. But I also assume they left a lot of stuff out that was in the book. So they get to Camp Half-Blood, and And when he gets to Camp Half Blood, he has to kill the Minotaur, and then he wakes up 3 days later in an infirmary. And when he wakes up in the infirmary, I'm looking at this, and this is the first time that it smacks me in the face that I'm like, is this Harry Potter? This feels like Harry Potter. Like something from the trolley. Like, I mean, it just feels like when Ron was in the infirmary in there, and it's a very similar thing.
Yeah.
Here's a boy who doesn't know his history. He doesn't know that he has magical parents. He doesn't know that there's a school/camp where he can go to be taught more about his ways. And then he has this horrible big baddie that he's got to fight. And in this case, it's Hades trying to get to Hades to save his mom. Like, it's Harry Potter, is it not? And maybe it goes back to that whole thing that where there aren't really any like original stories anymore, but it feels very much like Harry Potter in a lot of ways. This mystical world that most other people don't know about, and you know, his mom can't cross the barrier into the camp because she's not one of them, and I don't know. It just feels and the aesthetic just feels very Harry Potter.
Yeah, I would say so. And in the books, even more so, because he's supposed to be 12 in the books, where in the movie they made him 16, which is interesting. Yeah, which again would, like, they all, again, going back to like him being kicked out of schools, like he was bullied and would fight and things that, and so like that's very much also a part of like being a 12-year-old and going through middle school, which is like the worst part of at least of my life. Yeah. But you know, that's I feel like that takes the fact that they aged him up takes away from his character arc and kind of takes away from all the, like, it removes the internal struggle that he's going through, I think, a little bit.
Well, and also it can't be good for the series. I mean, you know, when they released this movie, it was 2010. And then they didn't release the second one, which I didn't know that the second one was actually coming. It seemed like they waited so long until 2013. So, I mean, I don't think that much time passes in the books for Percy. So they go from The Lightning Thief to Sea of Monsters in 3 years. By the time they got through the first 5 books, I mean, we wouldn't be through them yet. I mean, it's just, it's ridiculous. So I agree with you, like the whole Spider-Man thing with Andrew Garfield, where they were like, we're going to recast, but we're going to make him super young because we want him to be with us for a while. There's the story part of it, and then there's like the logistical part of an actor does grow up and, you know, and age. So I think that they're fixing that in the series. And again, we'll talk about that in a little bit, but let's talk a little bit about the cast. Because, again, I look at the cast and I go, the main 3, Percy and Grover and Annabeth, I don't think they've gone on to do huge things. They've done other things. But the supporting cast, I think, is what was, like, blew me away on this. So we have the gods. We have Sean Bean. And we have Kevin McKidd, who, again, Kevin McKidd is a big deal to me. I don't know that everybody else sees him as such. Rosario Dawson in this, like, what is she not in, honestly? And
I know.
Don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. More of her. Like, let's have her. She was night nurse in every single one of the Netflix series of Marvel. And then she's Ahsoka, and she was in Haunted Mansion, and she's in here as Persephone and does an amazing job.
Yes.
Catherine Keener is in this as his mom, Sally, and she was, the first time I remember seeing her was in the 40-year-old version with Steve Carell. Like, she was the one that ran the eBay store, and then he falls in love with. Then Pierce Brosnan, as I talked about, that was kind of huge. Uma Thurman, like, that was out of left field for me as Medusa. That's kind of like, that's a kind of wow factor. And then, you know, Joe Pantoliano, who, again, I think is a pretty big deal. And then it's directed by Christopher Columbus. Christopher Columbus, you know, we were talking about this before the show started. I was like, really? He started with Adventures in Babysitting, like the original Elizabeth Shue version. But then he did Home Alone. I think it was his big breakout. That's the one everybody remembers him from. And Home Alone 2. He cannot be blamed for anything past Home Alone 2 in the Home Alone series.
No. Those are
And
the only
then
two worth watching, in my opinion.
and then he in 2001, 9 years before this, directed Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. So of course you
Yes.
go back and get this guy if you're basically retelling a Harry Potter story. But he also directed Rent. I did not realize that either.
Yes, he did. Which
Uh,
I enjoy as a musical adaptation into a film.
well, it's not on Disney
Anyway,
Plus, so we're not going to talk about it.
I know. No, we're not.
Um, But and then Steve Coogan, who is like just so underrated, but he plays Hades. Now the problem I have with Steve Coogan as Hades is he's a goofball, and so
Hmm.
I'm not afraid of Hades when it's Steve Coogan, and they kind of make that point. Like he shows up and he looks sort of like a Mick Jagger wannabe, and they kind of call him Mick Jagger, and he's like, "Oh, is this what you look like?" He goes, "Would you rather I look like this?" And he jumps into the big fire monster. I don't know. I wanted somebody more devious for him, but I think the rest of the casting is pretty amazing. Thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. But then it kind of makes sense that Persephone is able to kind of kick his butt pretty quickly. Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting casting choice. That's the thing. You could have gone with, and I know they cast him as Hades in Descendants. You could have gone with Cheyenne Jackson, I think is his last name. And like I thought he was a great Hades, like as far as like a more intimidating, like strong presence. So I agree. I don't to be like. Well, I will say, without having Kronos as the big bad that the series is supposed to lead up to, which maybe it will in the Disney Plus series that's coming up, like he's not enough of a big bad to really be a convincing villain in the way he's portrayed in this movie.
Gotcha. Yeah, I agree. And he's very. I mean, he's very underused, I think, because we know that they're making their way to Hades using the Marauders map. It's not the Marauders map from Harry Potter, but it feels like the Marauders map from Harry Potter. So they're making their way to Hades on this journey, and so he's talked about, but we only see him when he appears at Camp Half Blood, which, by the way, I thought Camp Half Blood was protected. Hades just appears in the middle of Camp Half Blood. The Minotaur and all those others are on the outside, and Percy is safe in here. But he's not if Hades can just jump through, the fire while everybody's making s'mores and, attack. So it's really, I don't understand. Again, explain to me the rules and let's follow the rules. Like Hades just showing up in the middle of Camp Half Blood.
Yeah, I don't know. Again, I can't remember what happens in the like. It's been too long since I've read the books that I can't remember what happens specifically, but I have a feeling that kind of breaks the rules. Like, I mean, there's not supposed to be any monsters, period, that show up in Camp Half Blood, which I know is brought up about the Minotaur, that it's that like that monster shouldn't have even been there. Um, so there is something like that happens in the books, but I don't think Hades actually shows up. I could be wrong. Somebody tell me in the comments later about it. But yeah, it does seem a little asynchronous.
Yeah. So there's Luke, who is the son of Hermes, I believe, shows
Yes.
up at the beginning of the Camp Half Blood training and takes Percy under his wing, and he's like the cool kid at camp, but he's like really reaching out to the new kid, which doesn't always in most TV shows and movies and musicals doesn't happen. That's not the way that happened. Um, but he doesn't mean girl him. He welcomes him in, and then they go to Luke for help, and Luke gives them a pair of his dad's shoes so that he can fly, and he gives him all the instructions of how to get in and out of the underworld, and he gives them a map to go and find all these pearls that they need to find on this list. And so, the map is, again, like I said, very similar. Maybe I'm just making that up, to the Marauders map, where like things appear mischief managed. You know what I'm saying? But but when he gives them all these things, I feel like at the time I thought to myself, this guy's up to no good. again, feels very heavy-handed. Did it feel that way in the books? Did you? I mean,
No, I will say it did not feel that, because like that's the thing in the books.
mhm.
Like Percy is put into the Hermes cabin, right? And Luke is the head of, or like at least is, the leader in that cabin. So it makes sense in the book that he would naturally like befriend Percy and welcome him in. Where in the movie, again, because they don't talk about the cabins or any of that, how that works at Camp Half Blood, then it does seem random and forced and heavy-handed. And so that's, yeah, you are correct to be suspicious from the beginning. But in the books, it really does feel like a twist. But in the movie, again, they undermine it. They undermine all the reveals about Percy being the son of Poseidon and about Luke being the bad guy.
Yeah. Again, Uma Thurman I thought was great casting as Medusa, and at the same time, there's something about this situation that makes me think either she was doing this as a favor for somebody or they paid her gumboodles of money. Like it, I mean, I feel like she was a big deal to be doing this part. It seems a little, I don't know. I'm not going to say beneath her because, again, I think this was supposed to be a big blockbuster, but it seems odd to have her in this role.
Yeah, and that's a thing. Like, if it's gonna be a big blockbuster thing that launches into a series, I think that's what they were hoping for, is that it would be like the next Harry Potter in a way, and it wasn't. But to have her like be one character that gets killed, like in the first half of the movie, and her be such a big star that she is, like it's kind of womp womp.
Yeah.
But it's cool that she's in there. I think she's a great Medusa.
But the funny thing is that when they cut off her head, then Annabeth knows the rules of after her head is cut off and blah blah blah. It feels like we've done this a bunch, right? In mythology, and so they're retelling mythology, and Medusa is just whole again. But the rules of how to cut her head off, and then what after her head is cut off, what you have to do with it or what you can't do with it, seems again a little bit odd. Like I find it weird that there'd be some TVA manual that when you open it up would say, hey, if you happen to find Medusa's severed head, you can still use it. She can still freeze things. You just need to open her eyes. I mean, it seems a little off. But again, I know I'm trying to suspend disbelief when I'm watching this because honestly, I root for Percy. Like, I root for Percy Jackson as a series because, again, knowing how much joy it brought to my wife when she read it, and my kids when they read it, and the fact that everybody, enjoys it and loves it, I am always rooting for Percy Jackson. I want there to be, better things for Percy, but I have to ask these questions.
I mean, you're correct, but that's so the thing about Annabeth that they don't talk about in the film, because again they don't give any of these characters a chance to have any sort of an arc, is that she like is supposed to be kind of this stubborn, like tough know-it-all, has been training a lot, like is at the top of her game, at the top of her class, like one of the best demigods at Camp Half-Blood. Like that's her whole thing. So she is supposed to be the knowledgeable one of the three and kind of takes charge in all these dangers that they face along the way. And that's the thing, like Grover, that's the other thing about them being younger, is that like they would naturally be more scared and afraid of the world, which Grover is supposed to be. At least in the book, he's more afraid and timid of everything, but he's not in the film. And yeah,
So what I'm hearing you say about Annabeth is that she is the Hermione Granger.
Yes, essentially.
I mean, right?
Grover's
Like she
supposed to be the Ron Weasley.
I mean, except for the fact that they don't have a romance, I do think that's kind of the thing, right? He's sort of like the sidekick to Percy's Harry Potter, and she is the Hermione Granger who has all the answers because she studied in potions class and she has practiced in all of her spells, and she is like it just seems a little bit too, again, heavy-handed, that too too much of a coincidence that that's the thing. Um, so anybody who's watched the show before knows I spent a little bit of time in Nashville, and in this they go to the Parthenon in Nashville, which seems ridiculous now that I didn't know this before. But the Parthenon is an actual thing. It was left over from from one of the World's Fairs. I think it was like the 1900 World's Fair, and it was left over in Nashville. Then they rebuilt it as more of a permanent structure at one point, and it's there now as a tourist attraction. And so when I was there, I did not see a stone frozen Hydra in front of the statue. So clearly they've cleaned that up since then. But it's funny to me that that the Nashville Parthenon, because again of this being like mythology and Greek mythology, that they would have, where you're going to find that thing is in the Parthenon. So anyway, I think that that's neat, and it's weird that the Parthenon exists in Nashville, but it does, and it's basically just what you see here. I was looking for inconsistencies because we see that a lot, and we talked about this. Patrick and I talked a little bit about this last week. Is that when they would do, the Blackish show goes to Disney World, and then there'd be like this line to get into Soarin' outside the land, and it's like, why did you do that? Why didn't you just have it inside? I was looking for those inconsistencies here, but the only inconsistency is they walk in through the front door, which you can't really do because you walk in through the basement and you come up into the area where Athena is. You don't care. I'm just saying. So I think that I think that was the neat thing. But the map is only giving them 3 locations to go to, and I think that's truncating or shortening their quest from what the book is, from again my source. So there are only 3 places that they go. They go and they hang out with Medusa, and they get her marble, but it's not a marble. What's it called again?
I think they call it a pearl or something. I don't know. It's
pearl. That's exactly. So they get her pearl, and then they go to they get the one out of Athena's crown inside the Nashville Parthenon, and then the next one they go to is in Vegas, and they get the one that he holds. Though again, this is weird. If they're all supposed to be made the same, the one that he holds in that they get from Medusa is like this big. The last one he finds in a roulette wheel, which would be like that big. So it doesn't really quite make sense that they used it in a roulette wheel. But okay, that's the gag. We're in Vegas. That's where you would find a pearl or a marble.
Yeah, and I mean the pearls aren't even a part, or they're not in that part of the quest on the way. Or that's the thing. They're not. That is a change they made for the film, is that they actually get the pearls later before they go to the underworld, rather than they're stopping at these places for the pearls specifically, which I thought was interesting. But yeah, I mean, I guess they got it again. They have to keep it to 2 hours. So
did they get 4 in the, because that was bothering me too. I said something to my wife as we're watching this, and I said, hey, so they're going to the underworld to get his mom, and 3 of them are going, and they're only getting 3 of these pearls. That seems like a problem to me. The math doesn't quite check out. Nobody else is thinking, wait, we need to get one to bring mom out of the underworld too. Did they have to leave in the book? Did they have to leave Grover behind when they went to get mom?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, or did they leave? I don't think she comes back. I didn't think she did. I could be wrong. That's the thing. Because that's the thing. It was never part of the plan to get mom, or I didn't even think that they thought it was possible that they could bring her back, from the underworld, in the book. So I think the 3, they were given 3 because it's the 3 of them. But again, I would, and I kind of want to go back and read the book, honestly, before the series comes out, at least the first one. So it's been too long since I've read it that I don't really remember specifically.
Gotcha. So they get to the underworld, and Hades is there, and he makes the mom appear, and then he throws the shield down, and it opens up just a little bit, and we see that the bolt was in there the whole time. And so immediately we know that it was put there by Luke when he gave the shield to Percy to take with him. Again, he's trying to set Percy up, but it doesn't. I'm still not tracking. I think that the plot is thin, and maybe it's just because it's the movie. I'm sure in the books it makes a lot more sense, and like you said, they've removed some characters and some twists and turns, but the plot is a little thin as to why everyone thinks Percy took it, and then why is Luke so on this quest to frame Percy. But basically the deal is that Luke wants to get rid of Olympus, and it's a new time, and it's for his generation, and they need to get rid of Olympus, and the best way to do it's going to be to start this war where they tear each other apart. But apparently that's going to end the world if that happens. So anyway, they get the bolt, and Persephone knocks Hades out, and they take the bolt with them, and they leave, but they realize they can't get everybody out, so they leave Grover behind, but he's okay because he and Persephone are going to have a little party. Yeah. So and then we move on from there. So let me just stop real quick and say, if you haven't already, give us a thumbs up, help people to find us. I appreciate it. And thank you guys for being here and watching. But now also is the time that I'd like to ask you a few trivia questions about your favorite movie, Percy Jackson. I haven't done trivia in a little bit, and I thought, who better to do trivia with than a super fan like Emma, who loves Percy Jackson more than life itself. Super fan. I have 7 questions here. I'm only going to ask you 5.
7?
So we're going to... No. I'm only going to ask you 5.
Wrong show.
Yeah, exactly. So the first question is the first stop that they make where they run into to Medusa. What's the name of the garden center that they go to?
Oh my goodness. I even remember. I can picture the sign as I rewatch this. Oh my god.
It's tough.
It's not Famous Amos. It's something cheesy though.
Famous Amos.
I don't know why I thought it was Famous Amos.
For those great chocolate chip cookies.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Oh, Auntie M's. Oh, yeah, because Wizard of Oz, which makes no sense. Yeah.
Follow the Yellow Brick Road. Yep. So you said Auntie, I would say Auntie M's, Garden Emporium, and then there's something at the bottom that says and Statuary, which is just, again, a little bit heavy-handed.
A little creepy.
Yeah. When they are in the Garden Emporium and they use a truck to knock Medusa out, and then they use that truck to go to Nashville because you need to show up in Nashville in a truck, apparently. What's the brand of truck that they drive in?
Is it a Chevy?
It is not. It's a Ford. And and they keep showing it from the back with the big FORD on the back. So that's why I thought maybe you would be able to see that. When they get to Las Vegas at the Lotus, there's an Elvis song playing because it's Vegas. There's always an Elvis song playing. What's the name of the Elvis song that was playing when they get to Vegas? What?
Las Vegas.
No. Again, as heavy-handed as this movie is, they did not take that opportunity to play Viva Las Vegas. They should have done that.
I was not paying attention as to what song was playing at all.
A little less conversation.
Oh, okay. I couldn't. That's the thing. I couldn't tell you. Couldn't sing you that song.
A little less conversation, a little more action. Yeah. Anyway. Right. Yeah. What are you having fun, Emma?
I'm doing so well right now.
What is the name of okay, so Grover is a satyr, but he also basically identifies as a goat. And because of that he likes to eat trash and cans and things. He spends a lot of time chomping on a can in the hotel room when they stop.
He
what's
does.
what's the brand on that can?
Don't
It's not.
know.
Here's the thing too. It's not a real brand. And so that may be
That's what I
not a
mean.
fair question. Yeah, it's Berry Yum. Berry Yum. I don't know. Is it a joke on barium? I don't know. It's Berry Yum is the name of it. So that was a
Yeah, I
little
could have
bit
told
tough.
you. I knew the orange label. I remembered it was an orange label, but I'm like, I couldn't tell you.
Here's an easy one that you could probably get out of context. When they travel to Auntie M's, they're on a bus. What kind of bus, like brand of bus is it, or where is that bus going? Like, what is the sign on the front of the bus? Either one.
Uh, well,
And I
it's a
feel out of
Greyhound, and it's going to Atlantic City, isn't it?
boom
In
boom.
New Jersey.
Both of them. You got them both. Yes, absolutely. So they're not they're headed to somewhere else like Leeds, New Jersey or something like that. But yeah, it's Atlantic City and they get off and it says it on the front and it's a Greyhound. So see, there you go. You've
That one
redeemed
I got.
yourself. You've redeemed yourself. Um,
Sure.
and the last one is probably not fair, but I'm going to ask it anyway. I know you're like
Okay.
most of these have not been fair, right? Um, the the last one is the Parthenon in Nashville is in a park. What is the name of the park? It's Centennial Park.
Oh, is it? Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah,
I
because I
guess
was saying that.
I should have.
Yeah,
I should have guessed that. Oh well.
that's okay. That's
It's
all right.
fine.
Like I said, that one was a little bit out there. Bonus points. Do you know the name of the school that Percy and Grover were going to, like originally?
What? Not.
Ooh, it sounded like you were about
Yancey?
to say it. Yeah, there it is, Yancey
I
Academy.
was like,
I was about to say.
I don't know why I thought it was Yardley. Of like, it starts with the Y. But yeah.
No, Yancey. Yep, yep. You got it. All right. Enough of the turmoil there. So,
Great.
thank you for playing along. I appreciate it. You didn't do too bad. You got a couple. So back to the story is they get to they crush their pearls to get out of the underworld, and they say, take us to Mount Olympus, and it takes them to the top of the Empire State Building, which is where our story kind of began, and where Poseidon and Zeus were having their little like Sleepless in Seattle moment. But they get to the top of the Empire State Building, and they're asking them. Percy's like, this is the wrong place. It took us the wrong place. Shoot. And the mom's like, no, no, no. I've been here. Here's the entrance to Olympus, and she knows the entrance to Olympus, and it's an elevator to Olympus from the Empire State Building. Please tell me that's not how it works in the book. Does it?
I want to say it does. I want to say it does. That it's yeah. I think that's maybe, but I think so. And like the entrance, I think the entrance to the underworld is different in the book as well. I could be wrong. So in the musical, because there is a stage musical of Percy
Yes.
Jackson as
Yes.
well, the
Yes.
entrance to the underworld is in Capitol Records in Hollywood, which I think is funny. But I don't know if that's the case. I think it might still be the Hollywood sign in the books. Again, I would have to go back and reread it. But I want to say it is the same. It is the Empire State Building in the book as well, or it's some major landmark like that.
Yeah, it's kind of fun, I guess, but the idea that it's in the Empire State Building and there's an elevator and you get
Yeah,
into it and you go to
it's a
Mount
little
Olympus,
cheesy.
you go through the veil to get there. There's a final battle with Luke where Luke shows up and tries to take back the bolt so that they won't make the deadline, because of course, like any movie that has a deadline, we're right up to the very brunt of that deadline. It's like 2 minutes to midnight, and here comes Luke, and he's gonna cause a problem. And then Percy uses his newfound Poseidon ray in the woods gifts,
Right.
and just goes and just he decides now he can manipulate water anywhere, and he just douses and basically almost drowns Luke out of the water that's there. So there's a lot of water powers that happen, and I hope they explain them again a little bit better in the books, because he can heal himself, he can heal Annabeth. He can, use it to get stronger. He can use it, manipulate it from wherever he sees it. So, a lot of interesting powers that I don't know that I knew Poseidon ever had. But, you know,
Well, they kind of break those rules a bit in the movie. Not, I mean, well, not really, because I guess he isn't as strong as Annabeth. Like in that fight that we see at the capture the flag moment, um, like he is weaker than she is, and then when he reaches for the water, then he is strengthened. So that one they do follow to a T, but I don't know about the like force like wielding of the water.
yeah. So he perseveres. He gets the lightning bolt back up to the top of the Empire State Building. They get into the elevator. They get up to the top. They present it. He tattles on Luke and says it's Hermes' son who is the one who stole this. And then he's like, oh, by the way, my boy Grover is still in the underworld. Can you get him out? And he's like, sure, I'll get him out. I was surprised at that moment, again, having not read the books, that it wasn't hey, Zeus, can you do me a solid and make it so that, like, all the gods can talk to their kids again? Like, I feel like that would have been a moment for him to, like, call in that favor.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the thing. But like obviously because there's more to the series, they kind of have to have Grover because he's Percy's protector. So like that makes sense. But yeah, you're right. Like of course that would be a better favor to ask, but probably he would have said no. And that probably wouldn't have turned out in Percy's favor.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. So yeah. So and again, it ends happily ever after. There is a post-credit scene. Did you watch the post-credit scene?
Yes, of the one where Gabe is turned into stone.
Yeah, exactly. Which
Yes.
makes it just. I mean, it's a silly little scene. But yeah, it's there. So you can
Yeah.
watch that.
Well, yeah, that's not supposed to really happen either because actually, and they're not really supposed to have Medusa's head with them according to the book. Like when as they travel, they send it back to Olympus right away. So they never have it with them even to kill the Hydra in the book.
Yikes! A lot of changes.
So
A lot of changes.
why
Well,
he
and
has
again,
it in his fridge, I don't know.
so in Harry Potter and the that series, I read that series of books. Funny that I read that series and not this one, but I read that series of books, and in the first one, The Sorcerer's Stone, the Chris Columbus movie that he made, is almost shot for shot the book. Like there's not a lot that they leave out in the Sorcerer's Stone from the original. In the movie. So I think it's a really good like kind of retelling of the book. Then moving forward, there are a lot of things they change that don't seem like they need to be changed here and there along the way. So and then again, when you get to the end, those books were getting so big and so long, you had to cut some stuff out. Same thing with Jurassic Park, like that one, the Michael Crichton original book. They take like 3 characters and make an amalgam in the movie because there's too many stories to be telling. So yeah, I mean, I get that sometimes you need to do that, but with the first one out, I would have wanted it to be a little bit more true to the book, and that seems to be on the horizon. So we talked about the fact that there was a sequel to this one, Sea of Monsters, which was book 2. They've never made it past that. There was rumor that they were going to make book 3, and then they never did. The book 3 is the Titan's Curse, and then they've actually Rick Riordan has started writing additional Percy Jackson books. He wrote some other books that take place on the West Coast and include the Roman gods, and so there are a lot of books. And again, if you're into books and you haven't read this series, I would recommend it from what I hear, but I've never read it.
Yeah.
So yeah. Like we said, it started with a book series, and then it went to the Percy Jackson, the Lightning Thief, the movie we're talking about tonight, and then Sea of Monsters, which is also on Disney Plus. And then, as you mentioned, there was a musical.
Yeah.
Have you seen this stage musical of?
I have, in fact.
Have you really?
Not professionally done, but when I was working at Stage Door Manor this past summer, the how it works for each session is that each space, except for one venue, but each space typically has an A show and a B show. My show was an A show, which was Singing in the Rain, but the B show that was paired with it was The Lightning Thief. So we got to see their invited dresser rehearsal. So yeah, I think it's a fun. I enjoy the adaptation of the musical. I think it does it justice, does the book justice pretty well.
But does it not look like Rogers the Musical? I mean, the way that they've staged this with the clothes and the scaffolding in the background, I don't know. It feels like Rogers the Musical a little bit.
No, 1,000%. It is very much Rogers the Musical vibes, like in music, in feel, in the camp that's in it. Like it's great. It's a good time.
And then on December 20th, coming soon, Percy Jackson and the Olympians, which is going to be a series on Disney Plus. Now, unfortunately, if you don't have Marvel or Star Wars at the top of your marquee when you're doing a series on Disney Plus, they don't seem to do too well. Willow came and went. There was like Big Shot, National Treasure. There's a whole bunch of them that were big misses, especially like I compare this to National Treasure in a lot of ways because National Treasure was a big movie franchise, and then they go and they make the series. Now this one right here is different to me because Rick Riordan is like consulting on this one, and he's got his fingers on it to make sure that it is an accurate retelling. So this may be a huge hit. I mean, it may be. There's a possibility for it. I'm looking forward to this one. Drops on November 20th. Percy Jackson and the Olympians. The first season is going to be the Lightning Thief story, and then assuming it gets a second season, that will be Sea of Monsters, and it'll go through the books from there. So, and again, the kids are much younger, so they've already got a leg up because of the kids being younger and a chance there. But you're looking forward to this series, I assume?
Oh yeah, for sure. I think, especially with Rick Riordan being involved as much as he is in this project, I think it's going to be a lot better. Like it'll rectify what happened with the movie, in my opinion. And I think for those of us who did grow up reading these books, I think it'll be something that's fun and enjoyable to watch. And I hope it gets people into the book series, because I think it's a fun, good fantasy book series that, especially myself, I'm always telling myself I need to read more since I stare at screens so much. But yeah, I hope it inspires people to give the book series a read.
So here again is your cast. You've got Annabeth in the middle, or on the one side, Grover on the other, and then your Percy Jackson is in the middle there. So this is your new TV cast for this show. So it'll be interesting to see, because again, they've got the kids younger. That's good. So we'll wait and see how that shakes out. But the kid who is starring as Percy did an excellent job, and I forget his name is Walker Scobell. He was in a movie with Ryan Reynolds where he played young Ryan Reynolds and did such an amazing job acting like a young Ryan Reynolds. So I mean, if that leads anything to like his abilities in this one, I'm very excited to see how this shakes out. So anyway, so thank you for doing this tonight, and again, thanks for everyone for watching. Just a final note on what we've got coming up on Deep in the Plus in the next few weeks is next week is going to be Loki season 2. Desi and I are going to be talking about that one. She's very excited. She feels like it is her glorious purpose to talk about that. Robin Hood, which just celebrated an anniversary of the Robin Hood animated movie. And then we get into Christmas season with Duck the Halls, A Muppet's Christmas, Letters to Santa, and The Simpsons Christmas Special. So we hope that you will join us for that, and also for Park Center every Sunday night at 9 p.m. That'll be fun. And this week there is no News Tonight. So, rewatch some Deep in the Plus. Join us for Park Center. We would love to have you. But for now, this is and one last thing, our WIGS members, we love our WIGS, the WDWNT Interglobe Society. You guys are the best. WIGS member extraordinaire right here. And we would, if you would like to join our little family, you can go to patreon.com/WDWNT for more. So now, Emma, everything's done. We've talked about this movie. We've talked about what came after it. I would like to talk at length as to how much I want this new series to work, so that Disney might incorporate this into their parks. Maybe someday we'll be looking at the Wizarding World of Percy Jackson coming to a Disney park near us. But for now, we're just talking about the movie The Lightning Thief. I need to know from you. The people need to know. You've seen it. You love it in the past. But would you recommend this movie?
Unfortunately, I would not recommend this movie, only because there's a series coming up, and I just wouldn't recommend it. It doesn't do the books justice. I don't think it's a very, and taking it out of context, like if you've never read the books, I don't think it's a very engaging movie. Like I just don't think that the plot has enough. I mean, it has stakes, but not enough stakes. I don't think there's enough character arcs for any of the three leads. I would just skip it. The series is gonna drop in a week. I would say go ahead and watch that, give that a try, or maybe read the book. But the movie and especially the second one, is worse. But like, I wouldn't spend your time watching this movie.
Wow. You know what? I mean, you make a good point about the series. I think if you're not planning on watching the series, I'd recommend the movie as a standalone, because I know you have a different place in your heart because you've seen the books and how it relates back to this movie and where they dropped the ball. But in general, I think the movie was a good movie, but you make an excellent point. If you are going to dip your toe into the Percy Jackson series, it may be better for you to wait and watch the series that when it drops on December 20th. But as a standalone movie, if that weren't the case, I would probably say this is kind of a lost possibility, because I don't think most people are diving into Disney Plus looking for this. And that's kind of why we originally started Deep in the Plus, was to go deep into the catalog and say, hey, did you try this? Did you try that? Here's something else. And so I do think you're right. The series is coming, and if you loved the books and didn't watch the movie, I can't imagine that was the case. I think you probably watched the movie. But if you haven't read the books or watched the movie, then maybe the series is going to be better watched without this side story going on. So let us know in the comments what you think below. Thank you, Emma, for doing this. I appreciate it. Taking time out of your busy musical schedule to spend time with us and to talk about this. So hopefully we will see you guys in Park Center this Sunday night, and then next week on Deep in the Plus. Have a great one.
Bye.